Let's get going here. Sorry.
Recording in
We're
progress.
gonna deny that. Yeah. We'll get started back up here. Yeah, we don't have to listen to you anymore. Okay. Welcome everybody back today for our second day of meeting here. We're gonna start off with our basin direct reports, and I see Director Vasquez is online, ready to go. So we'll turn it over to you, Barbara.
Thanks very much. I just have a short update. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so I really look forward to welcoming CWCB to our basin in July. And the preparations for this have given me quite an insight into the work Viola does in advance of our gathering in a basin. So I really want to thank Viola for the work that she's done so far. I understand there may be a few details still hanging out there that will determine whether we actually go to the North Platte Basin in July, but I hope it works and look forward to seeing you all there. Next slide, Anna. Just a little bit of water update for the basin. As you can see in the upper middle part of this screen grab of 28th day precipitation, we haven't had a particularly wet spring the last month, but it's very, very close to median in most of the nine sites around the basin. Next. And the snow water equivalent is up around 125%, which is great news. As we saw from presentations yesterday, of course, the concern is the layers of snow, dust on snow, which will help drive a faster runoff this spring. Next slide, please. I want to circle back to some comments I made towards the end of our day yesterday. Andrew Reckert presented some really very interesting and informative summaries of the work that he's doing on climate and weather modification. We focused a little bit on the aerial cloud seeding work in the North Platte Basin. And as many of you know, the North Platte Basin has been the leader for the state in aerial seeding, something that the basin and the water users in the basin were very excited to participate in, but have decided as of a couple months ago that because of the lack of ability to prioritize flights out of Wyoming, they're going back to just ground-based. I want to make sure that the comments I made yesterday are not taken as criticism, but only as questions. Since we're not going to be doing aerial seeding again, we're dependent on evaluation of data from Wyoming. And I believe that is the major site for experimenting with aerial seeding. Whether it is truly better than ground-based, which is why we engaged in it in the first place. And the question is coming from the point of view of a scientist, not questioning the value of the program for the state. But there is weather modification going on all across the globe. As you'll see in the next slide, I did a few screen grabs from a website that gives you the opportunity to drill down into weather mod that's going on around the world. Some of it obviously is for increasing rain precipitation as opposed to snow. I just don't know, based on what I've been able to see in the academic literature, whether we're getting the best bang for our buck with the ground-based or whether we should spend the money on aerial. And we all know that humans don't like uncertainty. We'd like to be able to control this very, very important value in terms of water. So I'm hoping that the funding that Andrew mentioned that is going to go towards evaluation of effectiveness is going to give us a little better insight into whether we ought to lean towards the aerial as opposed to ground-based. And we can all imagine with climate change and persistent aridification in some regions, including ours, that there's going to be more and more attempts to get more out of each storm, as Director Brown was asking yesterday. So again, it's just trying to bring us into a scientific evaluation of what the best method is. So with that, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Barb. Any questions for Director Vasquez? All right, thank you. Director Wind, South Platte.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Board. Thank you. If we could go to the next slide, just a few subjects I want to cover. One, hats off to the Water Center, Denver Water, CWCB, several others who contribute to this Water Workforce Summit early in April. Northern Water had a few staff that attended, and I was thinking yesterday in the comments, I'd say a half a dozen times, there was suggestions that we don't have this pipeline full of talent coming to our organizations in our industry. And again, hats off for folks coming together, at least on the first day, really talking through how do we work at all levels under the dozens and dozens of professions that support our industry. How do we keep feeding that? Because I know all of us who are searching for the folks to replace ourselves someday and throughout our organizations are struggling to find those folks. So I think it's a subject we need to focus on. And again, kudos to the Water Center for putting this gathering together, which was at the Auraria campus on the 2nd, and then spur the second day for a job fair. Next slide, please. So we're living right in the South Platte Basin. I know the tables can turn really quickly. This is just a departure from precipitation just for the month of April. And last spring was so dry until about May 11th or 12th when it started raining. But we've been pretty blessed through the late winter months and early spring months in terms of precipitation, particularly in the South Platte and in terms of where a lot of our demand is, which will sets us up really for a pretty good year. As time goes on, certainly snowpack is very critical. But if you don't, like for many regions in Colorado, if you don't complement that snowpack with at least some precipitation within your service area or demand points, it can get ugly late in the season. So I think with what we've had so far, we're pretty good in northeastern Colorado. Next slide, please. Kind of describe, and I appreciate Director Vasquez talking about uncertainty, and we all like to dream about the time when we're going to have complete certainty in our life, and it just never keeps happening. This is a water supply index that's calculated for service area of northeastern Colorado, and it goes back to 94, showing the swing in that index through the course of a water year, and then where the average was, or the median, excuse me. And it shows we're at about a 2.6 right now, but it's interesting just in any given year how you can go from bad to good and good to bad so quickly. And last year's a good example. As I mentioned, we were so dry until about the middle of May, which the index changed quickly. But again, thus far this year, we're setting ourselves up for a good water year moving into the late spring, early summer. Next slide, please. So I think too much about data, trying to find that certainty that I can never find. One weather parameter that makes many of us really grouchy is wind. And after the last couple months, I thought for sure this was the windiest year I've ever lived through. For sure. So I just had to take a look at the data to prove myself wrong. This is just one weather station in northeastern Colorado. I happened to pick Greeley. And I compared last spring, so really just the months of March and April in terms of wind, miles of wind per day. And again, thinking for sure, we're just going to blow away in northeastern Colorado. So I compared 2023 on the top So again, on any given day, this is how many miles the wind blows to what we've experienced the last couple months. And I was wrong. It was still windy, but we had 104 miles per day on average of wind in 2023. In 2024 was less than that, so I shouldn't complain. It just it appeared to me we had like two, if not three events that were multi-day, multi-night wind events. But again, I was wrong. Data is always helpful to prove these things out. Next slide, please. Kind of rolling all that water supply into a ball, at least from a northern water perspective. The Colorado Big Thompson provides about a quarter of the water supply-ish to the northeastern Colorado. And based on those supplies that exist, Northern Waters Board sets a quota, which is an allocation from the Colorado Big Thompson project. It's very, in our opinion, a very unique way to allocate water that's kind of unparalleled in the West, particularly from a reclamation project. By its nature, it's a supplemental supply, which means if we're having a really rich year in the South Platte Basin, the board tends to set a lower quota. If it's quite dry, the quota is higher. And that quota number really relates to, in the case of a 70% quota, a single allottee, or for every unit or share of CBT that you have a contract for, you receive 0.7 acre feet per unit. So this is about an average year. Or long-term average is 0.72. But it can range from a 50% quota to 100% quota, again, depending on that need. So it's a pretty thoughtful process that our board goes through to really evaluate what's that need. And it's really based on a meeting that occurred in 1963 or 62, where the board described the whole quota process as very unique to Northern Water. It's not part of the federal contract, and it's really a mechanism to ration the water. The CBT project, by its final design and operation, didn't yield the supplies it was anticipated. So somehow you had to kind of move away from the idea it was going to provide 310,000 acre feet to something less. And this quota process is what allows that to occur. Next slide, please. So in the news, just picked up one thing that was high on the news. Thornton was pursuing for their second time an application permit request through Larimer County 1041 process. They had failed on the last attempt, came back going through the Planning Commission in March, and then the county commissioners starting in late April and into May. And ultimately, the three county commissioners approved that 1041 permit, which in terms of Larimer County relates to, on the map on your left, is really the segment in Larimer County, which is about 10.4 miles section from a pipe that continues on into Thornton, about 10.4 miles long, 42-inch pipe, and that's the segment across northern Larimer County in which they were seeking a permit, and they succeeded in that. Litigation, perhaps, time will tell as to that decision. That was a 3-0 decision by the county commissioners, and this ultimately leads to farms that were acquired in 85 and 86, about 18,000 acres of irrigated ground, and the associated consumptive use is about 14,000 acre feet per year will be put in this pipeline, ultimately taken down to the Thornton area. So concerning, not really new news, but Thornton's well on their way to exporting that water to the metro area. Next slide, and Mr. Chair, that's all I had to report from the South Platte.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Wind? Yes, Director Phil.
Brad, I was just curious on that one graph you showed, you had SWSI, and I wasn't sure what that stood for. In this
It's a water supply index.
Okay.
And those aren't unique to northeastern Colorado. Many organizations attempt to just find that index or define it, calculate it. using some of their own math in terms of where you put the weight in terms of how much storage do you have on hand, snowpack on hand, stream flow. So some of those index go into soil moisture as well. We've tweaked ours a little bit over the years, but it just kind of gives you a gut feeling of kind of where our supplies are.
Thank you.
Yes, Director Brody.
Director Wind, I just wanted to publicly thank you and your team for the great tour and congratulate you all and your partners on the amazing work that we got to see yesterday with the connectivity channel. It's always something we strive for, I think, to find those win-wins, and you and your team and the many dedicated partners that have made that project come to fruition are an incredible example of that. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yep, the process is much to be celebrated as the outcome of the channel itself. Stay tuned for a celebration between August and October to bring that project to closure.
Anyone else? I was just gonna, oh yes, go ahead, Director.
Director Wynn, thank you so much for that update. And thanks for mentioning the Colorado Water Workforce Summit. I connected DNR's Chief Operating Officer, Wendy Padilla, with Jessica Thrasher, with the Water Center is really leading in that space. And I can just say that DNR is excited to figure out ways that we can partner and support that work, because we're very interested in sort of like building up and diversifying the pipeline of water professionals and for the department overall. So thanks for bringing that up.
I was just gonna say thanks for letting us go into your pump station. Director Sakata and I, we always talk about pumps and the cost of pumping water, and I'm gonna just shut up now. So after seeing what you guys are doing, that was intimidating. So well done. And the rest of you guys missed an opportunity just to get on the bus and go home. That was cool to see. So, all right, to the Arkansas, Director Phil.
Okay, well, no one who's been around here for a while will be surprised to hear that I came up here thinking one thing about this morning, and I now feel differently. So, yeah, actually, I came up here in a not a very upbeat mood, I guess. Partly just due to some stuff going on in my own life, but also my parents and my siblings. Everyone's just having a hard time right now. And I don't know, I just came up here kind of going like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And by the first evening, I was my whole mindset was already turning around. And it's thanks to all of you, because you guys are remarkable people, every one of you, and your interactions have really been impactful. I'm going home with a totally different frame of mind, and I'm ready to overcome a bunch of challenges and just continue to be an effective community member, I'll just say. I thought it was funny. I was talking to Jackie when I was driving up here, and she asked me, I was lamenting some of this stuff, and she said, well, how do you feel about giving up the chair? And I was like, I'm not happy to do it. I like it, you know? As soon as I saw Nathan yesterday, I was like, this is awesome. This is going to be great. And it proved to be a great day. I thought we had a really good meeting. I thought Nathan did a great job. And everything just kind of fell into place. And I mentioned to Brad a few minutes ago, really enjoyed the tour, and it was a great reminder how much these field trips, it takes a lot of effort and everything. It gives us such a sense of place and context. I think it's really important. And yeah, that was great. And the opportunity to just kind of, you know, talk to whoever you're standing next to in those informal type of settings is also really welcome. So thanks for putting that together. And I think it's a really cool project, like Jessica said. And yeah, it just made this trip stand out, right? Sometimes we meet in like a ballroom or a basement or something, and you could be anywhere, but we're clearly in Grand County. And So that was great. You know, Jayla, in her presentation yesterday, it was sort of, I was a little embarrassed. She kept mentioning me, but it just a convergence of things. I've been doing a lot of stuff with WECO. They're doing their basin tour in the Upper Ark here in 3 weeks. And so been helping design that and then continuing to work on connecting them more to county commissioners. That's like a blank spot on their map, largely, or a vague spot on their map anyway. And we have succeeded in pulling together this 4-hour Water 201 at the CCI conference in a couple weeks in Vail. And I think that's going to be really impactful and just help commissioners see their way into more involvement with water and integrating water policy with land use planning, right? That age-old problem that continues to vex us in Colorado, but we've got to keep working on it. And we're never going to address it effectively if we don't have people making land use decisions that are, you know, at least have a working knowledge of water and can sort of integrate that into their plans. So I think that's going to be time well spent, and very sorry to hear that JLo is stepping down. That caught me off guard, but it's a great organization. And as we all know, you can't open a newspaper, so to speak, without seeing articles about water these days, thanks to the Colorado River. And there's just such a demand from the public for more information. And so I think WECO will continue to have an important role to play, and I'm going to try to keep helping them out. It's been rewarding. As far as communications go, we're doing a land use code update in Chaffee County, and one thing I laid down as a commissioner at the outset of this was if anything we propose has a net negative impact to agriculture, I'm not going to do it. And my colleagues nodded their heads, and sometimes that means I agree, and sometimes that means I understand what you're saying. And I'm not totally sure yet where we are. These land use code discussions always come down to, or seem to always come down to density and, you know, how many acres per minimum lot size, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of pressure, but only that we need to support agriculture, as I said, and sometimes that means giving them more flexibility for their future and being able to monetize unproductive lands. And sometimes that means protecting them from development on their borders. So I think, Robert, you can relate to both of those points of view. It's a very difficult line to walk, but we're trying to do that. And in that context, I've had a number of kitchen table meetings with ag producers. When I say ag producers, there's probably 20 families in Chaffee County that really, you know, have the large acreage and are really a significant part of the economy from an agricultural perspective. And those conversations have been powerful, I will say, and very emotional. And it only, I guess, strengthens my resolve to try to find pathways forward. Some of the challenges do tie to our realities of our hydrologic situation. You know, we're in the rain shadow. I've often told people we're kind of like Reno or something. Like that's a weird analogy, but sort of hydrologically, climate-wise, you know, we're right in the rain shadow, right up against these really high peaks, and it's really dry and warm where we are for our elevation. So really, we have amazing irrigated agriculture in what is otherwise a high desert. And senior water rights up there and our diversions are really important. And we've been working with our division engineer particularly because of compact challenges, but also because of being a seriously over appropriated basin. And we have been since near the turn of the century, the two turns of century ago. Yeah, there's real challenges ahead, and it's another one where I feel like ag's not a monolithic thing. We talk about it that way, but it isn't. It's a bunch of small business people. It's just really important, I think, to have local leadership that tries to help people find pathways forward. And part of my change of attitude, honestly, was half an hour ago, just having breakfast with our new state engineer. Really want to welcome you, Jason. I didn't know you prior to March when you came, but I'm really impressed, and I'm really appreciative and glad to have you on board. And thanks for stepping up. It's a tough job. The other thing I'll mention from our basin that you've probably seen in the news is Aurora Water either has come to the Arkansas Basin once again to help us sustain agriculture, or they've come to the Arkansas Basin to take more of our water. And I don't know that both things can be true. It's possible, I guess, but you know, that just as we saw back, I was trying to remember when it was, but before the whole drought task force, and I do mean that drought task force, conversation happened last spring in the legislature, I felt like Colorado had, in my experience, had never been so unified around the Colorado River challenges. And then we managed to kind of fracture that, not we, but as a state, we sort of fractured that a bit. But having an external enemy, so to speak, or aggressor, it does really bring people together. And I've never seen the Arkansas Basin as unified as it is right now because of the concerns about what Aurora has proposed in the context of agreements that we already had. I don't want to overstate it. I don't want to use this as sort of a pulpit, but just that in this same vein, talking about communication, how communication isn't just about sort of how you spin something or how you frame it up, but just also about whether you have conversations prior to doing those things, and that you do, however things get framed, that it's done collaboratively. That's really the model anymore. I don't think you can be a big gun and just come in, ride in and get what you want. You really gotta sort of pave the way with communication and invite people to the table to talk about what it is you really need, and then let's all think about what might be the best way to achieve that and potentially maximize the number of win-wins along the way rather than just doing what you think will work for you and maybe won't look too bad to other people. So that's been a challenge, but again, I think nearly every county in the Arkansas Basin has produced a resolution supporting our basin conservancy districts and the agreements they already have, and supporting the Southeastern's desire to see those agreements stand. So I think I'll leave it at that, but yeah, I guess I'll just end by reiterating, really appreciate y'all and the relationships that we have here. They go a lot further than just water policy. And so thank you.
Thank you, Director Phelps. Any comments for? Thank you. Okay, City and County of Denver, Director Brody.
Chair, I had my hand raised if I
Oh,
might.
I am so sorry. So sorry, Director Vasquez. Please go ahead.
That's okay. I just want to thank Greg for his thoughtful leadership. Not being in the room yesterday, it was difficult or impossible for me to have those sidebar conversations. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for your leadership over the last year and the humanity that you bring to the board, which was on full display today. So, and I thank you for that.
Director Brody.
Can we get the slides? Thanks. Oops. I have a good news report today. I'm going to choose to focus on the positive. So you've heard me report on our on Denver Water's lead reduction program in the past. You'll see as of the date of this report, which is May 2nd, we had replaced 24,404 lead service lines. These are customer-owned lead service lines in our system. And I am pleased to share that we passed a major milestone in the last couple of weeks. And yesterday, while we were all here, our team down in Denver was celebrating passing the milestone of 25,000 lead lines replaced in our system, which is huge and is a credit to all of the folks who are working hard on this program day in and day out, Denver Water employees and our contractors who are out in the streets communicating with customers, replacing all of those lead service lines with brand new shiny and safe copper service lines for our customers at Denver Water's expense. So really excited to pass that milestone, especially as EPA is implementing new rules starting this October that are going to put more responsibility on water utilities around the country to remove lead from not just their systems, but also their customer-owned service lines. And I'm really proud of my colleagues at Denver Water for being a leader in this effort. A lot of the requirements in EPA's regulations are based on our direct experience. And Denver Water is well positioned because we've been proactive in this space to not only comply, but to continue to ensure that our customers have safe and healthy drinking water. Whoops, too fast. Good news. We recently completed the construction of our newest treatment plant, the state-of-the-art North Water Treatment Plant. And that is now online and helping to deliver water to our customers throughout the metro area. These are just a few images. The image on the bottom right is an aerial overall view of the site. The photo in the upper left is one of our treatment trains, and then the landscape and the beautiful view from our new facility. And so that'll help us continue to ensure that we can provide that state-of-the-art treatment from water coming from the north end of our system. North side of our system, we also reached a milestone in the Gross Reservoir expansion project. For the last 2 years, this project has been under construction, focused mostly on site preparation. As you can imagine, there's an incredible amount of work that goes into readying a site, blasting rock, roughing the surface of the existing dam, clearing out trees where needed. And just over the last few weeks, we've really turned the corner and we are now in phase 2, which is the dam raise portion of the work. What you see on the left is the first batch of what will be roller compacted concrete going up. And by the end of the construction season, we hope to be right about at the crest level of our existing dam. And then this work will largely shut down over the winter months, and then it will pick back up again to hopefully in 2025 finish the raise of that dam. So again, I am amazed not only at Denver Water employees, but our contractors, in this case led by Kiewit Barnard Joint Venture Group, at just the incredible work that they do day in and day out to help us deliver on our mission and ensure that we've got safe facilities and can continue to supply not only our customers, but also supply water for environmental benefit downstream of this facility. So again, just really, really grateful and proud of the folks and the work that they're doing day in and day out. A lot about landscape transformation as well. And this is just one example of how we're engaging with our customers. We're, again, not just trying to address the landscape, we're trying to address customer attitudes and values when it comes to water and when it comes to landscape. And we hosted our first plant-tastic workshop at our facility. We had a huge response, and I think we'll be doing more of these and some in Spanish as well, where we invite customers in and we bring in experts from CSU, from Botanic Gardens, from many of our partners in this work to help our customers learn about what plants thrive in our climate and what they can do to help be part of the landscape transformation work. And then we also give out some seeds and gardening gloves and fun things to help get them on their journey to replacing existing turf with water-wise landscaping. I love the dump truck idea. We might have to steal that one. I think it's really smart and clever. And so again, I think this is just, another example of us trying to innovate and learn along with our customers and learn along with folks at the CWCB and elsewhere how to deliver on this vision. And then finally, I know Dr. Gibbs talked about celebrating public service employees. And, so often what you hear in the public narrative about people who work in government is negative. That has not been my experience. My experience at all levels of government is that we've got incredibly talented, passionate, hardworking people who care deeply about the mission and the work that they're doing. And so I wanted to share with you all a great example of that. This was a grassroots effort from some of our employees to create their own music video. So with that, let's play it.
Yeah, my yard needs water when it gets hard to believe these dry days that I watered that way, but we want plants to survive. Concrete just won't fly, so I say I water that way. Tell me why don't water when it's raining. Tell me why don't water
There's a little more.
Water that way. I'm gonna regret this so much. We're already.
So it's been really exciting to see the positive attention and energy that this has generated. The team even got a shout out from the Backstreet Boys themselves, which they were so over the moon about. It's made the national news and even international news. And more importantly, it's just generated a lot of positive attention on our watering rules, which, you know, you might think are really mundane, and who wants to be told about rules and what they can and can't do. And again, just kudos to our amazing employees for coming up with such a thoughtful and creative way to convey a really important message. So that'll end my report.
Yes, just 1 second, Paul. We'll go to Lauren and then.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Director Brody, excuse me, for that earworm that will be in our heads for the rest of the day. And also, I just wanted to tell you in advance that this makes me very worried for the inspiration that it may have given Ben Wade and Eric Sky, who have put videos of their own on YouTube.
Bring it on, guys.
We've already started talking about NSYNC.
Nice.
Yeah, some other lyrics have made the email chain.
All right, I wanna
so
see it.
I know. Let's not encourage them, but I just wanted to give you one. Oh, Swirl Jam, that was another one.
Nice. Love it.
Director Boucher.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Director Brody, I wanted you to know, I've been racking my brain. I don't remember how I saw that. But the first time I was watching, I was in kind of a grumpy mood and I hit it. And I actually got up and started dancing. Because I took a course one time called The Healing Power of Music. And it's like, if you're going to send a message across to people in a way where they're going to get it and receive it, it's fantastic. So it's awesome for your staff. Thank you so much for sharing.
And I'll just add, this was totally an in-house effort. It was written, sung, recorded, and produced all in-house. So.
That's fantastic. Anyone else? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Brody, like, we're the youngest employees at Denver Water. Like, I don't get it.
Somewhere, they'll learn. It's okay.
Shoot. Okay, anybody else? Yes, sorry, Director Owen.
I'm not going to talk about the Backstreet Boys video, but I do want to just say that as in my previous role over the dam safety group, I was able to tour both the Gross Reservoir construction site and the Chimney Hollow. And I don't know that from an engineering perspective, those two are really challenging and innovative ways to construct dams. So if you have a chance to do a tour of those facilities, I mean, the asphalt core is the largest in the country, I believe. And I think yours is also the largest RCC face to an existing concrete dam. So
Yeah.
the challenges that have been overcome in these two projects are truly nationwide level
Yeah.
expertise. So
Yeah, and Gross Reservoir and Dam will be the tallest dam in Colorado when it's.
yeah, I know the people in the Gunnison Basin are like, they did it 5 feet to top just on purpose. But it is from an engineering nerd, they are pretty cool projects to see. And so anyway, they're well managed. Like if you go out to the sites, it's amazing the work that they're doing. So.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Can I share a screen? Oh, I've got mine on the thing, so. Yes, please. Sorry. Okay. So, I just wanted to thank Director Felt too. The first meeting I came to, we were up at Steamboat and all the snow and the grime, and I got there late and I stepped out of the truck and of course I had parked in a slush puddle. I was like, this is a great beginning right here. Stepped off, got in, got to the hotel, and I think that packet was 1,300 or 1,200 pages.
Yeah.
And when you're saying, what did I get into? I was thinking the same things. So that next morning I got up and was able to ride with Director Felt over to the meeting place, and I appreciate you immediately putting me to ease, saying you're gonna love this. And you're right. I have really enjoyed serving here so far. So thank you for the beginning. I really do appreciate it. And all of the rest of you for the hospitality as well. Director Ullman brought up some of the things that had happened since our last meeting. We went to the Rio Grande Compact, made it to the Supreme Court. I don't know that that's really like an accomplishment, made it to the Supreme Court, but there we were. So we were able to go, our district sent quite a contingent out there just to, what an event, right? To go to the Supreme Court in the United States for a case that actually matters to you personally. And so we went, we got in line at 4 o'clock in the morning, and this is where the line started. Kind of scared me, honestly. I thought we had walked into a homeless camp, but you could pay people. We found this out later. You can pay people to stand in line for you. Things I wish I'd known, right? So anyway, we sat there in line and finally got into the Supreme Court. And guys, they're mean in there. Those Supreme Court police don't mess around. They're pretty cranky. But going to DC was interesting, just seeing the news. I'm not going to disparage any one news, but I'll disparage them all. They're so polarizing. They're so critical. But when you go to DC and you see the work being done, there's a feeling there that is unlike any other place. You know, that connection of government and people, and being able to go into this branch of the government. And I'll tell you, I'm as cynical as, probably more cynical than most, but after going into that Supreme Court and hearing those justices, I have full confidence in that body of our government. I'm telling you, regardless of how the media portrays those justices as crazy conservative, crazy liberal, the questions they asked to both sides, I was impressed. I thought, we can have our opinions, but we are in a pretty good country. Overall, we are in a good place, and I think there's good people doing good work. And my wife and son were able to go with me. We got to take a tour. We started a tour that night. The last night they were there, it was a walking tour of the Lincoln assassination. Holy cow. We did go to the Spy Museum too, Director Brody. I appreciate that heads up. That was fantastic. But we went on that walking tour of the Lincoln assassination and got to go through some of that historical part all the way down to Ford's Theater. And there is so much history there. It was great coming from the West, where everything is from a book or from a movie, to see it live. It was great. And if any of you get an opportunity, I would recommend going out there to build some confidence in what we're doing as a country, honestly. I'm not saying we don't have problems, but we're doing all right. Director Ullman put up some pictures of going to El Paso for the compact meeting then. Like he said, we had a tour set up, and this one, if you can see the dust, man, this is the closest we got to see those mountains. It was blowing so hard we couldn't see anything, but we're standing here at the American Dam. What happened in this point of the river is as moving along, we couldn't, apparently, this is coming from people know more than me, we couldn't keep Mexico from taking more than their portion. So the United States went back to where they controlled the property on both sides of the river, built a new dam, and then only allow Mexico's portion across this point. So that was the significance of this dam. And you can see the concrete apron there across in the background. That's the wall coming down over there. And of course the razor wire, and there again, something usually you only see on the news and how it's politicized, but it was kind of interesting to be there. I'll tell you, let me go back so you can see. I'll tell you one of the things that was interesting is we had the going thing with Tracy of who was better, DWR or CWCB. And of course, I'm always on the team CWCB. Until we took that tour, I'm not going to lie to you guys. Everywhere we went, it was Colorado DWR saying, this place is important because we fight about this. This place is important because we fight about that. And they were educating, just like Director Ullman said, Chad Wallace and Craig Cotton were educating everyone, whether it was New Mexico or Texas or where they were from, of the significance of all of these points all the way down. And I had to say, I was proud that I was associated with DWR too. I mean, I don't know what, it's close, it's close. Yeah, I'm a lot closer to allowing DWR to rise. But we have Director, when you, the capacity within your group, and then of course the Attorney General's office, it was fantastic. The background and the information, and to be able to see these sites, they're again very familiar with anything in Colorado. I can tell you anything about the sites and the locations and completely ignorant. And that was such a great thing to get all those pieces put together. So I appreciate them taking the time to do that. In our district or in our area, we had May 2nd, we had American Rivers. They've helped us a lot with our education committee. And so then they set up a tour bringing their Southwest district into our basin to see a lot of the projects and to help us keep developing good messaging and talking points. And so it was really cool to see some reciprocation now going. Usually they've been coming, now we're able to help them with some of their people coming into our area. On June 14th, we're going to do a Colorado River tour, 12th through the 14th. So Colorado River District came into our basin last year, and we were able to show them around, and now they're reciprocating. We're going to get to go see some of these projects from Shoshone and all the way down, and kind of put some of these pictures together of the whole system. And I'm looking forward to learning a lot more about a different river with different compact implications. Then as a reciprocation kind of the tour that Craig and them set up for the Rio Grande, we have, and I'm not sure how many of them are coming, but we've been in contact with the Interstate Stream Commission, the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District, and the Office of the State Engineer from New Mexico coming up in July to kind of see how are we dealing with these interactions of curtailing water rights to pay a compact. There's not a day in the Rio Grande Basin that a water right isn't being curtailed to make sure we comply with the compact. There's literally not a day. And then also with the work we're doing with sub-districts to help them decide how are they going to start, at least give them ideas of managing the groundwater, surface water interaction as proactively. We're far from experts at it, but we're down the road a little ways of trying to perfect our process. So this last thing I want to tell you, when I was younger and when you're in high school and you're in college and you kind of the shine starts coming off the apple, right? And you start realizing the world kind of sucks. And things aren't the fairy tale you thought they were. I can remember complaining to my parents about some of the expectations you have versus what everybody else is doing. I was raised really, really conservative and religious. I'm grateful for that. My dad told me a story, which I had never heard before. I'm ashamed to say, but it's with Abraham. So he told me the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? So there were 5 cities in the plains that were so wicked, and the Lord was going to destroy them. And if you're familiar with the story, he told me that there was this bargaining of the cities wouldn't be destroyed if the Lord could find 20, 25 people that were righteous. And as Abraham looked around, he's like, would you save them for 15? And then he looked around, he's like, maybe 10? And it got cleared down to would you save them for 5? Would you just save this for 5? And we're talking 5 cities, close to 500,000 people. Anyway, Sodom and Gomorrah got destroyed. But the point he made to me was if you think about it, if they'd have found 5 good people, those 5 good people would have saved 500,000. So the ratio of 100,000 to 1. And he says, apparently they didn't deserve being saved, but think of the power of doing good, whether people deserve it or not. And I have to tell you that changed my perspective. I'm not preaching religion. I'm just telling you, I changed my thought process of why we do good. Whether the people around us know we're doing it, whether they're unworthy beneficiaries of it, doesn't matter. The power of doing good is an exponential ratio that we can't always calculate. And so I really appreciate being on this board and serving with people that understand that principle. Maybe don't articulate it the way I just did, but understand that principle, that it's never the wrong thing to do good. And so I'm very grateful to all of you for the opportunity to be on this board, to serve here, and just close saying thank you. That's it. So any questions? Okay, Director Brown.
Thank you. So I had run into Jay Fetcher the other day and was hoping to be showing you some slides of his, but when I went to open them last night, they were said they were in the owner's trash. So I don't even know how to deal with that. I didn't even know computers said the word trash, but here we are. So, but I'll just tell you that in the past, for those of you who've been here, I think it would just be Director Brody and I. I've shown this slide before. Jay Fetcher is a rancher up the Elk River in Routt County, and he has been tracking the dates of snow off on his meadow as a demonstration of the impact of climate change. They have records and photographs that go back into the 50s that, you know, just show the drastic nature of that. And, you know, of course, every now and again, we get a big year and skews the data back again, but I'll have to show it to you next time. And, you know, he didn't even, I said, what was the date this year? And he said, you'll just have to see it in the slides. I can't even tell you what it was. But we will, we'll explore that next meeting. So we had another good year, which means that another bad year is right around the corner. We're about 116%. I know the slides were shown yesterday of where our basin stands now. And in a river such as ours, for those of you not familiar, we don't have any Bureau of Reclamation projects. We have two larger reservoirs, Stagecoach and Elkhead, that pretty much fill on an annual basis. They both look to fill this year. And so we don't really have the opportunity to turn rivers on and off, much like we saw in the great demonstration that Northern gave us the tour yesterday. So we take what we get, and that's, you know, a lot of what Commissioner Mitchell's message is, that we, I think, are one of the only basins in Colorado that really are at the whim of what we receive in snowpack for our agriculturalists, because not only do we not have any Bureau reservoirs, it's very uncommon for our ranchers to be able to afford to buy water. So, you know, you use the water that you have when you have it, and then that's it. So we'll see how this spring comes down. The issues that we always look at are wind, as Brad mentioned, has a huge impact on how our snowpack runs off. We've been pretty fortunate that we've had cold evenings, and so we're still maintaining a pretty great base up at the higher elevations, which is really useful to keep that as a slow runoff into the rivers. And then it's anyone's guess, of course, what the summer will bring us with rains, et cetera. So we'll see how it goes. Some good news out of our basin is that we just funded about $205,000 out of the Yampa River Fund grant process. We're in our 5th year. For those of you unfamiliar, it's an endowment that we set up with the assistance of the Nature Conservancy and partnerships in Routt and Moffat County. Kelly worked on that before she came to DNR, and it just has really been a significant aspect of how our community can fund, can help projects be leveraged with more money. And this year, we saw that one of the projects that we're helping to match up in the Bear River, and that's a great example, like I was saying. And then we had a couple other agriculture diversion projects as well. And then annually, our top priority is releases out of Stagecoach and Elkhead reservoirs to ensure that we're maintaining enough water in the system for our endangered fish, and just to keep things from becoming so dry that we're turning to long periods of river closures through the city of Steamboat Springs. So that's a huge bonus, and it is a very motivated board and steering committee of locals that
it was so great because Tom Gray, he works out of Moffat County's on the River District Board and has been on the roundtable for a long time, former county commissioner. And at our meeting last week, when we made these grant announcements and decisions, he said, you know, I just have to say how excited I am about this. And for those of you who may know the history, Routt and Moffat County haven't always seen things through the same lens. And it was a bit of a battle to get on the same page with our goals for the River Fund and to really come to a place where we were able to say, yeah, this is going to work out. We are meeting joint goals for the future of our basin that helps us keep that element of certainty that Brad's striving for as well. And, you know, he was just so excited about the projects and that we continue to do what we said we're going to do. And I'm just really proud of that locally led process and the impacts that we've had in the past 5 years. And moreover, looking out into the future of, you know, when my son, who's almost 13, is, you know, is his 20s and 30s, what that endowment could grow to support in the future, because people moving into the valley and people that have been in the valley and are fortunate enough to have extra money to put into the endowment are doing that. And it's really cool to see how fast it has grown and how much the river means to people in a community. And I know that's the case in each of your basins as well. The river brings us together, and that's a reason why being on this board is so special. Additionally, we have the Yampa Basin Rendezvous coming up, and that is a really cool project that the Yampa Valley Sustainability Council and Friends of the Yampa have created with a partnership, UC San Diego, I believe. And they are talking about, they've really led the scientific research on atmospheric rivers. And so we'll hear about that topic and more. You know, Kelly will be speaking as well on the legislative session. So that's coming up on May 29th and 30th and is a cool thing that we do in the basin there. I wanted to share with you that as part of the Water Conservation Measures Bill, Senate Bill 197 also included a measure that is impactful to my basin, and I'll briefly share it with you. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to talk about it offline. But one of the aspects of Senate Bill 197 was to support Tri-State and Excel and the closures of Hayden and Craig stations. In total, that's 5 units between the two entities. And, you know, this transition that we're making in energy is incredibly nuanced. And I was fortunate to work with Rich Belt as we discussed this with our community members and with legislators, why this is an important proposal for us and now law once the governor signs it. And, you know, we wouldn't have known what we know now. And now we don't know what we're going to know in 20 years. So the nature of energy is that, of course, everybody uses it. We know we need it. We need the redundant supply of energy. We need to be protected from storms. You know, it's so common that you never, you know, you take it so for granted that you don't even realize until you have a brownout or a blackout that it's so important to you. But that said, you know, we're looking at new technologies. Some of those technologies include pumped hydropower storage. We continue to research that. Hydrogen, combined cycle gas, and that would have a carbon sequestration element to it. We continue to look at small nuclear projects, and then we continue to work with our industry partners and our research organizations to see what's around the horizon. An example that Rich used, which I think is a good one to share is that, we thought battery storage was the silver bullet, that, eventually it would become so inexpensive that we would be able to bridge the gap of our wind and solar renewable portfolio, to have a dispatchable element in our pocket. And for a number of reasons, that is no longer looked at as a silver bullet. And so that, happened in a relatively quick time period. So anyway, the measures in the bill allow us to continue to use our water until these units close down. And as a kind of a, what is the word I'm looking for? Something point. Why can't I think of this word? It's about 45 CFS between all 5 units is what we end up using our historic consumptive use. So being able to use that until the units close down, the first one will close down next year. The last one slated to close down in 2028. We'll do that, and then we will be able to hold the historical consumptive use as that and continue to use that as our historic consumptive use, what we have done from the 80s until 2019, which is when legislatively we began ramping down those stations. And the other thing that does is protect us from abandonment. And that was a big question for us in Division 6, given what we have experienced over the years, as I think water districts across the water divisions across the state become more direct with their conditionals and with abandonment. We see a lot of rights go on those lists on the West Slope. I'm not sure what the Front Range looks like. Anyway, so we're really grateful for that. And the other part of this, which I think is most important, is that we have the opportunity in the Yampa to be proactive. And when I sit here and listen to you as directors and the directors that have come before you talk about the problems that you have experienced and that your community members experience, we have a little bit of a leg up because we don't have a ton of use yet in the Yampa. And so the planning that we do now and what we're able to do for the foreseeable future really does make a difference in how the river looks on an annual basis, but also how our community and our water using community thinks about the value of water. And the fact that we're going to be able to put 45 CFS in the river over time when the units close down, even if it is temporary, helps people see what 45 CFS does in a river like the Yampa, which has gotten as low as 20 CFS at Deer Lodge. So what does that difference look like, and how important is it to work together as a community to find ways to put water in the river so that we don't experience those dry ups? And that's really how I look at this. I know a couple of you have been fortunate enough to go on the Yampa River Awareness Project trip. We leave tomorrow on that 5-day river trip down Yampa Canyon through Dinosaur National Monument. If you haven't been and you'd like to go, let me know and I'll see what I can do for the following years for you. But I know Brad was a recent participant, and it's such a great way to see the river and understand that free-flowing nature of the Yampa. And so I think these two things connect, the Senate Bill 197 and awareness to the Yampa, because it really shows how anything we do, we have to do as a community. And there's really no one-offs any longer. And there's a couple things happening in our valley now. A big project called Brown Ranch, which you may have heard about, that is, continuing to be discussed on a local level to see where that housing complex will end up. And then we have on the far side of affordable housing, which is what Brown Ranch would be, the Yellowstone Club, which is a very wealthy, privately owned ski area and golf course slated to be constructed in Stagecoach. And, they're not bringing a ton of water to the table. So, we can sit around for years and talk about how we have some excess water. We have water in reservoirs to be developed. And then all of a sudden, you start to see those numbers drop when you add additional growth into the valley. And that's the small growth that we talk about, which is completely different from how Northern and Denver are working their systems. But those little impacts, remind us that we have to be proactive. We have to continue to look out into the future. So anyway, I'm happy to answer any future questions on that, or just let me know. I wanted to welcome Jason. It's a pleasure to have you. Kelly, congratulations on your promotion. That's really cool. And welcome to the board in person, John and Brad. Just really excited to work with you guys, and I'm sorry I missed you in March. And then congratulations, Lorelei and Director and Chair Combs. I always want to say Coombs, so I have to pause for a moment. And thanks to Northern for the tour. I really enjoyed it. And finally, I will just leave you with this. So last night I shared with a couple of you that I was in Scotland, very fortunate to take my son on his first international vacation. And I heard from 4 people, cab drivers, couple characters at the bar, about this big proposal to move water from Loch Ness to England through a pipeline, right? So last night I thought, well, I better find out a little bit more about this before I share this rumor. Well, the internet says it's a rumor, but by God, you ask these cab drivers and the patrons of the bar, and they are stealing Scottish water. It is happening. And, of course, it was fascinating to me, like a little bit jet lagged listening to these stories. It happens everywhere. Look at all these, So I don't know that it's true, but yeah, the water crisis is real, even in a place like Scotland and England, which I wouldn't have really thought of as it having an issue. So that's all in my report there. Thanks for listening to my rambling.
Thank you, Director. Yes, Director McLeod.
Well, I don't have a question, but I want to let you all know that bill that Jackie's talking about, she was the champion. She worked through a very complicated negotiation with many, many stakeholders. There was another provision in the bill that had nothing to do with the Yampa that caused a lot of water buffaloes to oppose it. And she got over that hurdle too. So she should get the credit for pulling that one off. It was tremendous work.
Thank you. Director Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is just a comment. Thanks for all your hard work, Director Brown. Really appreciate it. I did attend the Colorado River District's State of the Yampa meeting and got to sit next to Jay. So that was fun. He told me all about all the records that he has and everything. And he did bring up abandonment as well. But also I had the opportunity, and I think I mentioned this to you, Jay Whaley, who's the teacher in Oak Creek. So I was able to attend one of the measurement rule meetings that held in Oak Creek. And it was really, you guys got to meet him, I think, in the Steamboat meeting, but I wasn't able to be there. Just what an amazing person and an amazing FFA program that he has there. But again, hats off to the measurement rule group that's out there in Division 6. Mindy invited me to attend as many of those meetings as I could. And I thought they've done a great job of, reaching out to everybody and explaining why we have to do this and what's going on. So good job.
Thank you, Director Brown. All right, Director Boucher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, quick thank you to Anna. As I typically do, I ran in here this morning at 7:45 to see if she could download my videos and make magic happen, and she did that. So thank you, Anna, for supporting. I wanted to say a thank you to Director Felt for service as Mr. Chair. What a wonderful year it was with you. Also to Directors Combe and Cloud for stepping into the roles. I'm very excited for the next year. I also wanted to thank all of you for coming to Grand County. This is a pleasure to host a CWCB meeting in my home county. It feels oddly different, very comfortable. It's kind of nice. I hope you guys like it. It's not every year this time of May that the mountains are this wide and the rivers are flowing as much as they are. So it's kind of a treat this year. I think that yesterday, and thank you to Director Wind and staff for that tour. I think it was well stated about what an incredible project that is. And it circles back to, you know, Grand County's position as a whole with all of our stakeholders. When we talk about water up here, it's all about partnerships. And it's been that way for a very long time. And I know that the tour was with Northern, but the partnership that Grand County has with Denver Water and with other conservation organizations and the efforts that have been made up here, we're starting to see a significant impactful difference to some of the challenges that we have faced. And it really, you know, I want to drive the point home that the thing that gives me hope in talking about water scarcity in general, regardless of the scale, is the importance of these partnerships. And that brings me to my next conversation on a portion of partnership that is not going very well. And I want to be clear from the beginning so it's not confusing. I need to talk to you all about the wolves. And I'm doing it in a way directly tying it to water because I think that we will all see a significant impact in the future. And so I'd like to take a little time to fill you in on some information. So the first start of the reintroduced wolves started in December, primarily most of them in Grand County, a few in Summit County. We started seeing them pretty quickly. And then on April 2nd, my family had the first calf kill occur to us in our herd, the first depredation. And then the following 6 occurred to our direct neighbors and dear friends. And I would like to tell you a little bit about who these neighbors are. So the Farrell family, the hardest working ag family that I know. They're the largest livestock producers in Grand County. At the start of the ILVK River project, Kelly Farrell, the dad, runs an excavation business on the side of his ranching. And we kind of had a conversation about how we could make it work while he had no specific expertise in river restoration in particular, that if we were having all of this engineered and he was the contractor that had substantial experience in moving earth and understanding stabilization, and then we had the right staff on board for the habitat work, that we could give a really great punch to it. And that has been going on for a period of time since 2012 with the more significant project starting in 2014. So we have over 10 years of history of Kelly Farrell building river projects for the irrigators of the lands in the vicinity of Kremling. And so the trickle down impact of what is occurring to their family regarding water, the irrigators of the Kremling area are very in tune with what is going on right now. Beyond that, when we proposed the water conservation project dating back to the year 2020 that this board voted to fund in the March meeting of 2020, the Farrell family were the largest individual family participants. They agreed to have an eddy covariance tower located on one of their ranches without payments, without lease agreements, because they understand and know the importance of what it means to study and then have data understanding the consumptive use of high altitude forage. Their operation leases a ranch that last year is tied to an alternative forages project also funded by this board. We were able through their oldest son basically to take out 120 acres of irrigated alfalfa with the intention of planting 120 acres of sandfoin and having CSU and other partners help us prove the amount of water savings that we could have by growing sandfoin instead of alfalfa and match yield production for that. Again, with all of Grand County and Middle Park watching this activity and knowing it's going on. A little bit more information on that. I have worked specifically with Kelly for 25 years. His oldest son, against the will of my mother in the Catholic church that I grew up in, asked if I would marry he to his wife. And so I became an ordained minister to marry him to his wife. His other brother asked for the same thing. So I officially married 2 of them. And over the course of the last month, it has come from a lot of different directions that the Farrell family, by increasing their livestock numbers at their home ranch where these depredations have occurred, have been baiting wolves. This is the most honest, sincere family that I know. Their operation historically, they have a lot of lease ground. They send the replacement heifers to a grow yard in Greeley every winter where they have a relationship down there. Every May, those heifers have to come back. They lease property on the river bottom from irrigators of the lands in the vicinity of Kremling to Cavon. And come May, when the snow goes, the cattle have to leave so those people can prepare their meadows for irrigation. So the livestock numbers did increase. That's their historical operation, and where they had to go is their home. So concerning the wolf reintroduction, we assume, and when I say we in this context, this is coming through the Middle Park stock growers. We assume that all of these have occurred from 2 wolves. We have asked those questions without clarified answers. As denning and the location of this happening to my family and the Farrells, we don't see an end of this happening. CDA was very kind to us and provided some funding for us to hire a range rider. It has been effective. Our non-lethal techniques are continuing to trickle and fail because they are becoming less and less afraid of human interaction. And at the rate that this is going, it is not sustainable that that family will be in business. And so this board talks about resilient, sustainable agriculture. This family is very well known and has been a part of very significant water projects within this county. And so I'm going to ask kind of the following, and one of the reasons I bring this up, I feel legitimately it's this important to the water community because the trickle-down impact of something like this happening in natural resources. The stock growers and the Farrell family are not seeing this as a Colorado Parks and Wildlife issue. It is a state of Colorado issue. And so that impact, especially when it comes to DNR, is not going to leave. I'm asking specifically that if anyone has a lead on where the rumors of baiting is coming from, to please immediately squash that. It is not only insulting to their family, it makes me physically ill to even talk about. The Middle Park stock growers have submitted a series of letters to Colorado Parks and Wildlife and others. Well, they do not feel that their questions, specific questions, have been answered. And what this really boils down to at this point in time is a management practice. There is a management plan associated with the wolf reintroduction. We have asked specific questions. Those questions have not been answered. And what is going on is coming to a boiling point that is very challenging. So through different channels that we have, through Parks and Wildlife and through DNR, and however we might find ways to work together, I think we are in desperate need right now of adult conversations coming up with practical and legitimate management solutions and commitments to each other about how we are all going to work together to get through this. Because what we have experienced starting on April 2nd to present date, that is not occurring. So I have to move from that to always give a message of hope. I hope, Anna, you might have this queued up. Being wide in the river flowing that we all saw yesterday, the ongoing work of alternative forages, kind of following the work of the Conserve Consumptive Use project. My family participated in planting a field of sandfoin last year. Sandfoin is incredibly challenging to get established unless you have perfect sprinkler irrigation systems. So working with a number of partners from the Land Institute and different ag universities, we attempted this process to develop a best management practice for transitioning what was a sod-bound condition hay meadow to see if we could successfully grow sandfoin. Hit it if you're waiting on me. Seem that exciting to some of you, or maybe it is. It's all sandfoin, and it is coming in amazing. When you're standing up high, the field still kind of looks like soil, a little bit earthy. When you get down here, all these plants that are growing, some species can be pretty hard to identify at this kind of age of life, but sandfoin is not, because it has a big old flat seed. This one already germinated enough, I don't think you're really even going to see the seed. A little bit. That's as sandfoin as it gets. And if you look around here, it's supposed to have one about every 6 inches, and I would say we're actually tighter than that. So interesting. You got to feel the sandfoin. So my family has been planting this in some format for about 10 years with moderate success in smaller plots. And you can go ahead with this one. So this one is the silphium, and I know the sound's not great. I apologize. Short, but here's our silphium plot. And they looked really sad, right, going into fall.
they all, every one of them, I haven't found one that's not coming up yet. Let's see this guy with, they're all growing. Kremling, silphium. So the rest of the grasses around the silphium here are residual. And then this is where I did the kernza and silphium. So I would like to hope that most of this coming up is kernza. And we will see what the silphium does, but it's definitely in here as well. We just did a blend planting. Silphium. Pretty excited. Silphium is growing in Grand County, Colorado. Woohoo!
So I will spare you some of the long conversation. I'd love to keep talking about silphium. Many of you have heard me talk about it before, but it's a plant that was thought to be extinct, that was found. It has never been successfully domesticated and grown in larger areas. And the processes of how to plant it and where to go, because it really is in our inner circle of our partnership, we call it the unicorn plant. It hates water. It's the only plant I've ever grown that hates water. And I am so excited to see it coming back, because it did not look last fall like it went dormant. It looked like it kicked the bucket. And so if this proves to grow this year and to continue, it's really one of the more rare circumstances of how the planting occurred. Most places where they're doing this is a very controlled environment. That's out in the meadow. And so this is a very exciting time because this is really not been done in very many locations, if ever at all. And so there's a lot of good work going on that continues in the Colorado River, and we will continue to give updates about it. And with that, I will conclude my director's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Boucher. Appreciate that. Any questions, Director Scott?
Thank you, Director Boucher, and thanks for sharing the concerns that you have. I just can't imagine the fear and the upset that's going on in the community because of the wolves. And so really whatever we can do at the Department of Ag, know that we want to be there to support what's going on. And if, you know, if it means dragging people to the table, we'll do it, because I agree with you. It's just we have to have some good adult conversations about this.
Well, thank you, Director Sakata. And, you know, the timing of, I have to believe, I'm not sure you gave this to us yesterday. You'll know that crops versus livestock here, 71% economically within our state of livestock. And this kind of information that's going around, the livestock community is very aware of what's happening and how it's being handled. And in particular, the West Slope and the concerns are real. And so we appreciate that, Director Sakata. And I think that to stress again, the action of the stock growers right now that we are looking for is sincere conversations of solutions to find a way to work through this instead of just giving complaints. We need solutions to move forward. So thank you.
Yes, please, Director Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just want to say, Director Boucher, that really appreciate your comments. And, you know, I'm not really authorized to talk any about the wolves specifically, but I do want to say that I appreciate the grace that you've shown, you know, our staff of a very difficult mission right now, and just all the constructive work you've put into this. And I'll be sure to flag your comments for our leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Director Cloud.
Thank you. I'll get to my picture here in a second. But so I'm gonna give a quick update on what's been going on in my basin. So the San Juan Basin itself has been pretty quiet, business as usual. So it's the San Miguel. The Dolores district has been a little bit busy. I know that the Ute Farm and Ranch Enterprise started irrigating in the April 1st. And they're been planting alongside their existing alfalfa fields, and they're going to be getting ready for their first cut here pretty soon. So that's actually pretty exciting for them. The Dove Creek area has been, you know, the farmers are working. They're basically, it's the weather has been challenging a lot for everybody lately, just because it keeps changing quite drastically. But the Dolores River itself is reaching 707 CFS starting actually on Tuesday, May 14th, which is actually pretty good for the river. And so they're still hoping that what's the snow that's left in the mountains, is still gonna come down and run off. So we're hoping to have the full allocation this year in that river system. So that's all really good news. They're also having some staffing issues in the different irrigation areas. So they're continually working with new staff and training that staff so that hopefully they'll have full capacity soon. And they're able to provide the delivery service throughout the entire year. I know that they're also teaching new staff for the Toyac hydropower plant, and that started just this past couple of weeks as well too. The San Juan National Forest is taking advantage of the conditions right now. I know that the wind hasn't been as helpful because we're experiencing a lot of wind. Usually we get wind in March, but now we're getting it here in May. It's been pretty tough, but they're also doing a lot of control burns in the mountainous areas, which it's good, but it's also the smoke from that ends up collecting in the valleys, which isn't as good for some people that are having respiratory issues. But other than that, everything else seems to be working pretty well. I know Cortez is starting their turf removal process. So everything's moving progressively along, which is good. But we'll go ahead and go to my slides. So I got to speak at the 40th annual Southwest Water Conservation Seminar. It was hosted at Skyette Casino Resort. I don't have a picture of me being on the panel. I was on a panel with Commissioner Becky Mitchell and Commissioner Esteban Lopez he's from New Mexico's commissioner for the Upper Colorado River Commission. I know Director Sakata had a picture of me being on the panel. So this was my view. Sitting on the panel, and I could see Director Felt walking across the room there. Yeah. So that was just my view of, but you can see we had a good crowd this year for this conference, and hopefully it'll continue to grow. So next year, I believe it'll be hosted again on the Southern Reservation. So we can go to the next slide. And so I know Director Gibbs brought up the MOU that was signed with the Upper Colorado River Commission and the 6 Upper Basin tribes. So this is everybody that worked to get that MOU started, all the hard conversations that took place before the signing of this and the announcements of it. So there you can see there, Ann Castle, the federal commissioner, is standing in the middle. Becky, of course, is in there. Manuel Hart, the chairman from Ute Mountain Ute Tribe, the commissioners from Utah and Wyoming, and Ute Indian Tribe, which we're so grateful that most of their council had come. I know that the Ute Indian Tribe and Utah they don't see eye to eye most issues, but for this, our conversations creating this MOU really help provide the collaboration that is needed with the 6 Upper Basin states, or 6 Upper Basin tribes and the 4 Upper Basin states. And so getting everybody together to commit that we're going to collaboratively work together going forward, and that that commitment itself is a big statement to getting all of these sovereigns together and making that commitment and saying that the collaboration will go on continuously no matter who is in any of those seats, and that it will hopefully be sustainable for the Colorado River Basin as the Upper Basin moves as a collective. So you can go to the next slide. So there's Becky with Manuel Hart, Chairman Hart, and also Avery Tafoya from the Hickory Apache Nation. This was also, all of this took place on the Hickory Apache Nation's, their land and cattle lodge, which is in Chama, New Mexico. It's a beautiful lodge if anybody ever gets a chance to go there. It's fantastic. So you can go to the next slide. getting ready to sign. So there's the 3 Ute tribes sitting together, Chairman JT, gosh, I forgot JT's last name. Sorry, he's my cousin. And then Commissioner Esteban Lopez, Chairman Hart, and Becky were all sitting at one table. So you can go to the next slide. And this is me signing the MOU, and then we took pictures afterwards. You can go to the next slide. And this is everyone that signed the MOU and our plaques that we received in commemorating the historic moment within the basin. So you can go to the next slide. So I was lucky enough a couple of weeks ago, I got to take a small tour of the Dolores area, particularly in Natarita. And so this is us having lunch at the confluence of the Dolores River and the San Miguel. And we had a good conversation about, you know, what's been going on in the basin and what some of the activities that they're hoping to take place in the near future. And the other picture is me standing up on top of one of the ridges, and where if you look down, if that little edge of where the road kind of connects, that's where we were actually having lunch prior to that picture taken. So you can go to the next slide. And then I got to speak at DU Law, and I know Director Sakata also had a picture of me being on the panel on that. But he took this picture of me, so I didn't have a picture of me being on the panel, but I took this picture, and this is of my friend. Her name is Lorelei. We've been friends for quite a long time, so I finally got it. We get together every so often, but she's also a student at DU, and so am I. So we got together and took our picture. So we're happy to see each other, and that's all that I have for my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cloud. Looks like you're doing a heck of a lot of really good work there.
Thank
Does
you.
anybody have any other? Director Brody.
I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your report, and I love seeing the photos. It makes me think back of the picture that I'm sure all of us have seen of all the white dudes standing around the table when the compact was signed. And to me, your photo is a nice commentary on how far we've come. Obviously, we still have a lot of work to do to make the water space more inclusive, but I just want to commend you and Becky and everyone who participated in that MOU. It's a huge step forward, so thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. I guess I should also mention, so June 2nd, 2024 will be 100 years of the Indian Citizenship Act. So it'll be 100 years of us being citizens in the United States. So having that moment, sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. 102 years later, we're getting there. I did forget to mention, we did have Southern Ute Tribe had a quick trip or a meeting with Commissioner Tootin and Senator Bennett, and they announced that we received $2.3 million of funding from the Bureau of Reclamation for a Bureau of Indian Affairs project. So one arm of the federal government is helping out another one refused to help. And so it's good because we're as soon as we get those 6 crested weirs put in place, and then starting this fall and next year, it's going to provide not the entire delivery system for the Pine River Irrigation Project, but some. So we'll have water delivery to both tribal and non-tribal water users in that area. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we're getting there. Baby steps.
Did you have a comment, Director? Okay. All right. Thank you. Director McLeod.
If I could share my screen, I think that would be preferable. Is that possible? Let's see. The boring water stuff comes first, but I have an anecdote I want to share with you that Director Combs reminded me of. You know, he said at his first meeting of the water. Anybody else see it? This is a preamble. Director Combs said when he came to his first meeting, he came in and Director Felt said, "You're gonna love this." And he has. But when Director Felt was first appointed, I ran into him at the Water Congress convention and I said, "Greg, you are gonna love this. You are gonna get to go around the state and see amazing places and meet a lot of interesting people. And you're really gonna enjoy your service on the board." Well, then COVID came, right? And a year later I saw him and he said, "You lied. All we had was Zoom in Denver. I didn't get to go anywhere." So anyhow, can we make this work? I want to share it from here, if that's okay. Okay. Well, let's see if we can go back one. Right. So everybody got it here now? So the Upper Gunnison Basin is the headwaters of the two rivers that form the Gunnison. And we had a great fall and winter, but we crashed in April, as you can see in terms of our snowpack. We're now falling below average. Now, last week, Wednesday through Saturday, it snowed every night. So it may be possible we're catching up, but at this point, we're running behind the average. This is the status of the reservoirs. This is about a month ago, but they've only filled just a little bit more because it's been pretty cool this spring. So these numbers are pretty much normal for this time of the year. Having two federal projects in the neighborhood gives you a great source of data from the Bureau of Reclamation, and this is how they're forecasting the basin to come out April through July runoff. As you can see that the Gunnison River is looking pretty good, but Blue Mesa will not fill. The inflow will be about 570,000 acre feet, which is about 80% of average. And other parts of the basin were running behind average also. Taylor Park Reservoir is doing well, which is good for the Upper Gunnison because we have 106,230 acre feet stored there. So I'm going to change the subject. Everywhere I have gone in the last few weeks, everybody says, "Well, what about the bridge?" So I'm going to tell you about the bridge. Actually, there are three bridges across Blue Mesa. The bridge over here on the eastern side, which is the Lake City Cutoff Bridge. The one in the middle bridge is the one where the problem has arisen. So you can see that it's quite a distance to the west on the reservoir. And then there is the Sapanero Bridge, which is on the west end of the reservoir. So this is the Lake City Bridge, fairly small. This is the middle bridge. This is the one where we've discovered the problem. This is the Sapanero Bridge, which is very similar in construction, although not as long as the middle bridge. This is a lower water view of that middle bridge. Right here, that reservoir, when it's full, is 330 feet deep. So these pillars are pretty tall. This is what those girders look like underneath the bridge. Pretty massive steel structure that they've discovered the problem with. And here's what they found. This, when they ground down the rust on one of those steel girders, this is what they found. And they closed the bridge immediately. No warning, didn't tell anybody. And all of a sudden the road is closed. People were actually trapped on one side or the other that afternoon. So what are they doing about it? Well, they've got this contraption that they put underneath and they're sandblasting and grinding every one of those girders to see if they find any more cracks like that. And this this thing underneath is capturing all of the sandblasting and the paint and everything that's coming off, so they're not contaminating the water. But they're gonna run this all the way across that bridge before they decide what they're going to do next. These are the solutions they're looking at. It's 3 of them just involve steel plating. Some of them are steel plating just where there are failures. Others, they say, will put steel plating underneath all of the bottom. Another one will be steel plating top and bottom, and then finally replace the whole structure. Obviously, we're hoping that one of the plating solutions will work. So in the meantime, Gunnison County has come up with a bypass. And the way that works is if you start at the Lake City Bridge on the west end of the east end of the reservoir, I'm sorry, then you travel down Highway 149 about 18 miles, and then you go due south to just above the bridge. It comes out half a mile west of the second bridge. They've done a lot of work. That county road is just a gravel road, seldom used. So they got out there and put down a lot of road base, did a lot of improvements, and it's working pretty well. As of today, they've lifted the weight limit to 85,000 pounds, and they're allowing trailers to go across and small commercial vehicles. Not too bad, but all of a sudden they discovered that it's too much dust with all these people driving up and down the gravel road. So Gunnison County Road and Bridge loves magnesium chloride. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but magnesium chloride does keep the dust down, but when it gets wet, it's a disaster. They have mag chloride on the road in front of my house, and this is what it looks like after a rainstorm. So you can see how that makes the travel a little more difficult. Our neighbor came over on Saturday. So the car washes are going to prosper. That's one thing. Good news. Okay. And I just have one more, and that is to say, if you're in the neighborhood, June 24th, the Upper Gunnison District is celebrating 65 years of service to the community. We're going to have a little party with entertainment and food trucks and wine and beer and music, and everyone's welcome. And that's all I have for today.
Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions or comments for Director McLeod? Oh, yes, please, Director Vasquez. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director McLeod, the magnesium chloride story is a big deal. Mag chloride is used all over the state for dust suppression. It does turn into a mess when it's wet, but also used in excess, it produces chloride poisoning of any plants that are in the runoff area for that mag chloride. There are solutions that are actually lignin-based tree products, and I'll email you the information about that. You might be able to wean your road and bridge off of mag chloride.
I'm not optimistic.
I'm not either, but I'll send you the information anyway.
Okay, thank you. We're running a little strong. Does anybody object to shortening the break again to where we can go? All right, so let's be back at 10, just right before 10:35. So we'll do 7 minutes again. Is that all right? So we'll start then. So right before 10:30. Thank you. Thank you. Right at 10:30, we'll start. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Okay. We will, we've got some people trying to get things moved around to get checked out, so we're told to go ahead and start and they'll come back in. So I-70's closed.
Weather's too nice?
Are you serious, Robert? I-70's? Okay, well, we'll put you on that. Go to Google and find out for us. Right? Okay, we will start back to, we're on item 19 with our Attorney General's report. So I guess we'll have Attorney General Bill Weiser, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Digesting the
If we need to take a little time to verify, I can.
Stay up here. Stay up here a little longer.
I guess we should.
First, Director Coleman, it's great to have you on this new role, and Director Felt, your leadership was tremendous. Also, Director Cloud, also in a new role. We had a chance to visit with a consultation with the Southern New Tribal Council that was meaningful as always. I want to pick up the Sodom and Gomorrah story because doubt is the reason that they were viewed as problematic is they were inhospitable to their neighbors. So the underlying reason also is important because there is I think we in Colorado honor about we're all in this together, and the water community lives that value. I really appreciate Director Boucher talking in the spirit of how do we work together, caring about one another. That was the opposite of how people lived in Sodom and Gomorrah. I also want to invoke from another spiritual tradition, Nuggets forward Aaron Gordon, who has the following to say. In my experience, it's almost like a law of the universe where there's a limit in how much you can do if you're doing it for yourself. But if you do it for somebody outside of yourself, if you do it for the person next to you, if you do it for your family, if you do it for your brothers, your teammates, there's no limit to what you can accomplish, which I find very much on point. And that note of hope about the work we have to do, it is daunting and it is crucially important. I'll pick up the discussion of the Rio Grande case. I'm glad you got to be there. I'm sorry we didn't talk earlier. I could have given you that tip about paying someone. In any event, I agree with you about the Supreme Court as a form of principle. We can talk afterwards whether or not this Supreme Court always honors that ideal. But I will say this case is one that we do have cause for optimism. It's fair to say Justice Neil Gorsuch of Colorado understands the issues. The harder thing we face, and I am concerned about this, is the Reclamation Act is an extraordinarily unusual federal law. I'm not sure how many federal laws tell the federal government you have to subject yourself to laws of a state and dispute resolution in state court, which the Reclamation Act does. Federal government management of water is subject to state water law. And for some of the justices on the court, it was clear that was a concept that wasn't fully understood. The optimism that many see is Justice Neil Gorsuch will be able to prevail, and the justices who are struggling with that concept, when they do their homework, will realize it. But I will say there's room for error in any of these cases, so we can't count any chickens, as it were. There's always a caution about watching an oral argument and concluding what's going to happen. So we're going to stay nervous until we get that decision, and then however it comes out, we're going to have to roll with it. It's a obviously big picture legal question about the role of the federal government in compacts and what reclamation law means and how reclamation law interplays with compacts. In terms of building up our team, I'm glad to say the legislature will give us another lawyer to join
Lane and company. We really feel great about the quality of folks we've been able to build up. We're really happy that Jen's not doing 2 jobs anymore. We got to welcome Jason and your new first assistant, who's working on the state engineer side of things. The other thing that we're able to bring, which I think is going to play a really valuable role, is an advisor who worked directly with Scott Steinbrecher, our deputy in natural resources. There are projects that keep coming up where clarification and engagement from our office is a huge plus. A notable one, of course, has to do with the compact we have with Nebraska, and the concern about the plat and the building of a canal is generating a lot of questions, some legal issues, and we want to make sure we've got the bandwidth to address them. Since cloning Scott was not an option, and he does have a lot of relationships in that part of our state, we're going to have a protege approach. I also, and we've talked a lot about this with Lauren about the issues around water infrastructure funding and how can we make sure we're doing everything we can to help take advantage of what is a once in a generation moment, and having our team fully engaged is something I want, and this is going to be helpful to advance those sorts of projects and other ones that come up. And the importance for Scott is he does have a lot of management responsibilities. Having someone to be a right hand on water will help him be more effective and engaged. I want to again celebrate and lift up what our Vice Chair Cloud talked about, this recognition of the tribes and the picture. I think it was a really meaningful accomplishment. I will also say it is painful how the lower basin states have not found a way to honor their tribes, their obligations. And there was litigation last year where Neil Gorsuch ended up on the dissent on that issue about the opportunities for the tribes to be recognized and treated appropriately under federal law. We're walking that walk, and that means a lot. And there's work on infrastructure and other fronts to continue doing it, so that that's not just a theoretical commitment, but it's a practical reality as well for our tribes. So we stand ready and excited to work with you to advance what I think is an important milestone. The other thing worth noting is there's a lot of work that's still happening in Colorado River that we're going to, I guess, hear about shortly. Our team is fully engaged in that. It's complicated. We have to be fully vigilant, creative, collaborative with our neighboring states. And as I've said before, not afraid to defend Colorado's rights insofar as the lower basin states don't have a serious proposal. So this is going to be a very big year. In the best of all worlds, by the end of the year, we're actually getting towards guidelines that we can live with. There are lots of alternative options that we have to be prepared for as well. So I'm thrilled to have the team we have, thrilled to be able to build on it. One final note, I joined Dan Gibbs and our CDPHE counterpart in Durango and in Silverton for natural resources damages meetings around the Animas River and work we're doing there. It's work that's really important that we got a lot of great community feedback on. We also have a new state Clean Water Act bill that is going to get implemented and is important we do it smartly and effectively. One point that I've raised that we'll make sure to stay involved is being model of, let's call it reasonable and effective and expeditious permitting. That's something that we have to walk that walk, and we're going to be keeping an eye on that as well. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Attorney General Weiser? Yes, please.
Thank you for that update, Attorney General Weiser. And I actually don't have a question, but I do just want to express my gratitude and DNR's gratitude for the partnership with your office as we work through these issues with Nebraska. I think some of you know, like I've been coordinating an interagency team for the last 2.5 years now, almost, since Nebraska announced their intent to build the canal. And it's been wonderful to work with your team on that. So thank you. And I'm glad you'll be able to continue to build out that team through the resources that you secured through the Long Bill this year.
Mr. Chair, I do want to say your point earlier about how the state engineer's office operates in DNR and our office. It's a model that we are able to hold to in Colorado, of real interdisciplinary collaboration and problem solving. It's really important for our office to have that partnership and to work through complicated issues in the right spirit. It puts us in a great position on all fronts, literally and figuratively. So the Rio Grande work that you talked about, but obviously true for Nebraska, it's true for the Colorado River.
I just want to echo and thank Attorney General Weiser as well. We do have an amazing working relationship with both the water unit, which has a new lead, Derek Turner, which thankfully Jen's going to still be helping us out with certain intrastate issues, but with both the federal and interstate unit and the water unit. And because of that, at our annual state engineers meeting 2 weeks ago, we have a tradition of honoring one of the AG staff with the Attorney of the Year award. And we honored Becky Crotty this year, who works in the water unit on a lot of cases across the state. So it is, I think, like Attorney General Weiser said, a model for how we can work together. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks.
Anyone else? Okay. Janet, Director Maley, did I call you Director Maley? What's appropriate?
No, just
Our favorite counselor.
that's perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. We are now going to go into executive session. During executive session, we will consider agenda item 20A as identified on the board's agenda. This session is authorized pursuant to 24-6-4023A of the Colorado Revised Statutes. We'll take a motion and then we'll need a break as we make adjustments.
Okay, so I'd accept a motion to go into executive session. Director Brody, is there a second? Director Wind? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, we'll take a break till we can get set up to go into session. We need to have like I said, our favorite counselor, Jen Mealy, read her spiel. So go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board went into executive session to consider agenda item 20A pursuant to section 24-64023 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. Discussion during executive session was limited to discussion on that topic and no formal action was taken. We can now move on to agenda item 22. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, agenda item 22, Amy.
Great, thank you. For the record, this is Amy Ostick, CWCB staff, and I'm here for agenda item number 22, Colorado River updates. There we go. And the first thing I want to note is I know that Director Riss mentioned we have a new team member on the IFWE team, and I just want to say how excited I am to have Felicia on board. I think she's still, yeah. Hi, Felicia. Sorry, Lane, and Scott and all of our other wonderful attorneys. We stole her from the AG's office. I've known Felicia for a while now and was just really excited to be able to bring her on the team. And I'm also excited that we're getting close to being fully staffed on the IFWE team. And I keep having this moment where I realize there are going to be 11 people on the IFWE team once we're fully staffed. And that's a lot of people, but I kind of take a step back and realize that this is the reason that we've been able to bring so much firepower at the interstate level. I'm having all these incredible team members. And so I feel really excited that I get to lead this team. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian.
Good morning still for a little bit, but McPherson with the Interstate Federal and Water Information section. Oh, too far. Oh, that's backward. Sorry. I'm going to be discussing recent updates on Glen Canyon Dam infrastructure and new guidance from the Bureau of Reclamation on how releases from Lake Powell will be conducted in the future. So Reclamation has recently released new interim operating guidance for Glen Canyon Dam during low reservoir levels at Lake Powell. This guidance is in response to findings that have been made subsequent to a high flow experiment that occurred in April of 2023. So Glen Canyon Dam holds back Lake Powell, as you all know, and has 3 ways of releasing water. The first are the spillways that release water at high water elevations, which haven't been used since the 1980s. These are not shown in the diagram. The second and primary release mechanism is through the penstocks, which passes water through turbines and generates hydroelectric power. There are 8 penstocks and they can be operated from elevation 3490 or minimum power pool up to full pool at 3,700 feet. These are shown in blue in the diagram. The final way to release water and the subject of the new guidance is through the river outlet works. There are 4 outlet works and they can release water down to 3,370 or dead pool. And were never meant to be the primary mechanism to release water. They're shown in gray in the diagram. Here you can see a picture of the 4 river outlet works hollow jet valves that shoot water into the tail race of Glen Canyon Dam. The tail race is the engineered riverbed where flow re-enters the Colorado River below the dam. Typically, the river outlet works are unused and water is released through the penstocks. In this slide, you can see a video of the river outlet works releasing water during the April 2023 high flow experiment. Anna, can you play the left video? They look pretty dramatic. All right, can you play the second one now, Anna? So in the second video, through the glow of the patriotic light show, you may be able to see flecks of epoxy and steel shooting out at 75 feet per second, as unbeknownst to Reclamation, the river outlet works were being cavitated. I see Splash Street Boys is the first recommended video. Okay, so what happened? During the April 2023 high flow experiment, Reclamation released a high flow rate of water at 39,500 CFS for 3 days in order to boost flows in the Grand Canyon. While they did this, Lake Powell sat at its lowest elevation since filling at 3,522 feet. This low elevation causes low pressure when water passes through the tubes, and low pressure causes bubbles to form and implode, causing the coating of the pipe or damaging the coating of the pipe called cavitation. At the same time, the impact of the water hitting the tail race and the geometry of the canyon causes sediment to scour and swirl backwards, depositing into an island below the dam. Without concurrent releases through the power plant, which were occurring at this time, but would not if Powell fell below power pool, the sediment would build up at the bottom of the dam, possibly causing additional damage. The commission is conducting analysis of the conditions that caused this cavitation and tail race damage. During an inspection inside the outlet works, they found that the coating had been stripped at the top bend of the pipe due to cavitation. While this damage done over 3 days will be fixed by a recoating of the pipes, it shows that reliance on the river outlet works is not a plausible strategy if the reservoir falls below minimum power pool. To investigate possible fixes, Reclamation has built scale models of the river outlet works and tail race at the Technical Services Center in Lakewood, Colorado. You can see a picture of our, let's skip ahead. You can see here a picture of our Intrepid team that was given a tour in April. Along with recoating, the hollow jet valves are scheduled for replacement in the near future. Reclamation has also issued interim operating guidance on operations of the outlet works and is investigating possible infrastructure fixes, such as the smoothing of the bend, coatings, and new outlet valves that won't scour sediment. Play this one as well, Anna, just a little bit. Sediment on the right that is also visible in the actual tail race below the dam. And this is the island of sediment that causes concern for the damage to the dam potentially in the future. So that's the scale model. All right, we can skip ahead. Thank you, Anna. So last slide, the interim operating guidance has 2 main mandates while investigation continues. 1, exercise the full extent of operational capabilities within the Upper Colorado River Basin to attempt to maintain reservoir level at or above elevation 3490, minimum power pool, to allow redundant downstream delivery of water through the penstocks and river outlet works if needed. This essentially means that Reclamation plans to continue DROA activities of altering the timing of Glen Canyon Dam releases from the upper initial units down to Lake Powell. 2, to minimize the potential for cavitation damage in the river outlet works, the maximum flow through any one of the 4 conduits should not exceed the interim maximum flows. These values are based on preliminary estimates of head losses in the conduits and cavitation development in the upper vertical bends. Table here. This table shows that the interim maximum flow at all elevations below 3550 will be reduced below original design values. At low elevations, this could have impacts on the ability of Glen Canyon Dam to make downstream releases to Lake Mead in the lower basin. So investigation is continuing, and this is sort of what we know at this time. That, pass it back to Amy.
Thank you, Brian. And I think this presentation by Brian kind of highlights the real importance of having an interdisciplinary team working on these issues. I think about when we were doing this tour, and Lane and I were there, and our teams, and Lane and I were sitting in front of Brian and Anna, and we were kind of nodding along like, yeah, we understand all this. This makes sense. And Brian and Anna gave us some crap afterwards. I'm like, did you really understand what they were talking about with cavitation, all this? But I appreciate having Brian and others on the team who can really break down some pretty complicated information that we're getting and explain it in ways that make sense to attorneys and recovering attorneys and all of us. So thank you, Brian, for that. And another note that I wanted to make, I was thinking about Andrew's presentations yesterday on weather modification and on the snow course. And I think about when I first took this position as section chief of IFWE, and I thought, I don't even feel like I have a full understanding of all the various programs and issues that come within the section and why. And it's taken some time to put it all together, but when I really think about it, I think, and one big question I had is water information. What is water information that we're using? And the ability of the team that we have to put together technical information and help advise Becky and help advise all of us on what to do made me understand, oh, this is why water information is important to interstate and federal issues. And I also just wanted to kind of draw the line between what Andrew was talking about and everything else we're talking about on the Colorado River. One is the fact that we all know our contribution to the system is snowpack. And there's a lot of water that flows out of state from that snowpack. And we do a lot within the IFWE section and at CWCB to track that snowpack, to monitor all of it, to know what our supply is, to use within it. And the other thing I want to note is weather modification. It's actually part of the 2019 DCP. It was the third leg of the Upper Basin DCP stool, so to speak. It was in existence before the DCP, but it is, a critical component of what we do in collaboration with the other basin states to do our part in the Colorado Basin. So I just wanted to, these are things I've been thinking about, and I wanted to tie it all together for you all as well. Oops. So with that, I have just a few updates. I'm not going to spend very much time on the Upper Division States and Tribal Nations MOU because Director Clow really went into that. But I just want to say, I think from our perspective, on the state team and Becky's perspective, is that this is really a long time coming. It should have been done a long time ago, but it really memorializes a lot of the commitments that we have made to the tribes in Colorado and will continue to adhere to. So I was excited to get to be a part of the work leading up to that. A number of other updates to share. I do want to provide an update on the post-2026 negotiations and where we are with that, and one particular issue that has come up. But I also wanted to take a moment and talk about, just briefly, about System Conservation Pilot Program. I think I can suffice it to say there have been a lot of issues, complications. There are a lot of lessons learned from SCPP, I think is a good way to put it. And I really appreciate Jason, our Director Ullman, working closely with our team, with Brian, with Michelle, to understand what the issues are that are coming up and address them. But that's all to say that we, and hearing from you all too, has helped us solidify the view that we think we need to make sure that we are tracking all of these lessons learned, that we are looking at them and we're talking to participants and maybe people who didn't participate to learn about why they didn't participate, or those who did, what some of the complications are. So we have actually hired SGM to help us do a review of lessons learned. And Mark Harris is now on the SGM team, and he's just been an incredible asset in helping us kind of work through some of this. So we're just in the initial stages of that, but we hope to report more to you all soon. Some other kind of late breaking news on a different front is that the supplemental environmental impact statement, the record of decision for the final environmental impact statement, for the 2007 guidelines, adjustments to the 2007 guidelines, was just released on May 6th. So I wanted to take a moment to go over what's in that. A lot of it won't be a surprise because we saw the preferred alternative previously and have talked to this board about it. But essentially what we see in the EIS is the 3 million acre feet of conservation in the lower basin states through 2026 through compensated measures. And I believe that's up to 2.3 million acre feet will be compensated with federal funds. There are some small adjustments to Powell and Mead operations to protect certain elevations, but really what we saw is the feds take the lower basin's proposal to voluntarily conserve 3 million acre feet and make that the preferred approach. So I'm happy to talk about that a little bit more, but like I said, I think this is something that we've talked to this board about before and kind of what we anticipated. So with that, I think I'm going to switch gears to the post-2026 world, which is where we're really trying to focus a lot of our time right now. You all are very familiar with the Upper Division States alternative that we submitted. So I'm not going to spend time going over that, but what I did want to highlight is that it was a lot of information. I know that we went over that virtually, which can be a struggle. So if you have any questions, please feel free to continue to reach out or raise them today. If you're getting questions from people that you're hearing from, the right button, this is a really good place to send them. So we've created a whole landing page for the alternative where you can go read it. There's the press release, an infographic, an FAQ, but it's meaty and complicated. So if there are issues that arise that are not addressed in that FAQ, please feel free to reach out. So I want to take a little bit of time today to talk about an issue that has come up in our discussions about post-2026 operations, and that's the no action alternative. So in any NEPA analysis, there's a requirement for a no action alternative in the EIS. And the idea of the no action alternative, the purpose of the no action alternative is really to create a baseline to say if no action is taken, this is what would happen. In a lot of cases, when you see an EIS process, what you will see is that the no action alternative is continuation of whatever has been happening for however long, just the kind of, status quo. And that's not the case for the 07 guidelines, because per their own terms, the 07 guidelines actually expire at the end of 2025. And of course, the operations will expand through 2026. But since on their own terms, the 07 guidelines expire, that's not what would continue in the no action alternative. So that opens up the question of, well, what is the no action alternative? And what is this baseline against which we should be considering our own alternative and other proposals that might come up? So the 07 guidelines, when they expire, revert back to the long range operating criteria. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a second. But it also states in the EIS that we would revert back to the baseline that was used to analyze this EIS for surplus guidelines. That word surplus is kind of a non sequitur now, but in 2000. That EIS was when LROC was analyzed. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about LROC and what that is in a second. But it's important to note that those were guidelines for surplus conditions, which I think it's safe to say we are not in today. So there's some open questions that remain. So what have we heard? And I guess just to back up for a minute, where are we in the post-2026 process? Reclamation is currently working on developing alternatives. So they're looking at what was submitted. They're considering what the no action alternative should look like. So these are the things that they're thinking about right now. And they've provided a little bit of insight on what their approach to the no action alternative would be. What we have heard, and there's a lot of text here, but I'll just cut to the chase and say what we've heard is that they're looking at releases from a Glen Canyon Dam of 8.2 million acre feet a year and equalization at higher levels at Glen Canyon Dam. They are considering this through the lens of the no action alternative that was contemplated in the 07 guidelines. There would also be some kind of unclear shortage guidelines to reduce deliveries from Lake Mead. But the big things that we are seeing that we're a little bit nervous about is that 8.23 annual release, and then this continuation of equalization at a certain point at Glen Canyon Dam. So, sorry, I don't know why this is a struggle to use this remote control. So what is our view, or what are some considerations that we think should be looked at when considering a no action alternative? Well, what would happen is reversion back to this long range operating criteria. This was called for in the 1968 Colorado River Basin Project Act to develop long range operating criteria. And to be clear, the 07 guidelines were essentially an interpretation of LROC, implementing LROC. It was a perspective on how LROC could be implemented. Since those expire, we essentially go back and say, okay, well, what is LROC and how are we going to implement it going forward? And what we would assert, and what we have stated on multiple occasions on the record consistently, is that there is not a minimum objective release of 8.23 million acre feet. That the LROC, the 68 Act, all of that is subject to the compacts, to the treaty with Mexico, and that 8.23 number kind of bakes in a delivery obligation to Mexico that we believe that we don't have at this. I mean, let me just be clear, there has not been a recognized deficiency to the obligation with Mexico, that 1.5 million acre feet. So there's that issue. And then there's the issue of the idea that we have a delivery obligation every year of 7.5 million acre feet. And I think we've been pretty clear about our position on that as well, that it's a non-depletion obligation, 75 million acre feet over a 10-year period. And there are a lot of legal nuances there that I'm happy to get into or have our attorneys get into if you'd like. But I just wanted to raise this issue for you all so that you know what's going on and some areas of potential concern that we're identifying with the no action alternative. So that's really all I have today. I know that I just dumped a lot of information on you, so I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any other questions? I would just like to ask, just to be clear, you're saying if it went to the LROC, there is no numerical obligation with that other than what the compact specifically complies. 8.23 is an addition by the lower basin, trying to insinuate that that's in there?
So I'm going to try to not get myself in trouble with the attorneys right now
Sorry,
and interpret this too much. But what I will say, and this is where it gets complicated, there are a lot of considerations in LROC. One of those is what we call, in the Basin Project Act, 602A storage. So there should be a consideration of how much storage can the upper division states essentially hold in Lake Powell and the upstream initial units. There is a consideration of how releases should be made from Lake Powell as well. 8.23 is referenced, but what we would argue, and what we did argue at that time, in fact, is that that should not be viewed as a minimum objective release, that all should be is subject to the compacts. It's explicitly subject to the compacts. So it's complicated, I think is the short answer, but we would argue that the releases from Glen Canyon Dam, the amount of water that we are storing or allowed to hold back should be looked at through the lens of the compacts. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, I appreciate. Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions? Oh, yes, please, Director Scott.
This is just a comment. I really want to thank you and the staff. I know I was really nervous when I was asked to speak at that CLA Colorado River Law, whatever conference was. And so I really appreciate you guys helping me out. Thanks.
Okay. If there's nothing else, we'll go to agenda item 23 then.
Amy Ostick for agenda item number 23, litigation fund request. So this is something that this board does every year around this time. And this board is directed by statute to authorize the expenditure of funds to support our amazing team of attorneys at the Attorney General's office. And so you should have received a memo from, why are you laughing?
That's the only reason she paid this degree.
Sorry. So at any rate, you should have a memo in your packets from Attorney General Phil Weiser. Lane Bioniak is here to answer any questions you might have about the details of why these funds or how these funds are used. But I'll just go ahead and skip right to the staff recommendation. And again, happy to take any questions that you might have. But the recommendation is for the board to authorize expenditure of $1,992,000 for litigation-related activities in fiscal year 2024 to 2025. And here's a breakdown of that funding by basin.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on this? Or I think, like I said, if it's in the packet where we went through, so is there a motion to approve staff recommendation on agenda item 23? Hey, Director Klaus, Director Brown was the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Agenda item 24, Andrea.
Andrea Harbin Monahan, CWCB staff for the record. This is agenda item 24, the Pint Room Special Use License. For a little bit of background, in the 1980s, the Army Corps of Engineers constructed the Chatfield Downstream Channel Improvement Project following the construction of Chatfield Reservoir. And this is a flood control project downstream of the reservoir and is meant to provide flood protection for life and property throughout the relatively urbanized reach of the South Platte River, between the reservoir and the confluence of Bear Creek near Highway 285. So the CWCB became the non-federal sponsor of this project, and as such, we are responsible for the operation and maintenance of the approximately 7-mile reach. So, as the non-federal sponsor of this project, the CWCB receives and acts on requests for use of land within the CWCB right-of-way. And many times, these requests take the form of a 25-year easement agreement. However, in this case, we are trying to get a limited use license for the Pint Room, which they have requested. So the Pint Room is a restaurant which is located at 2620 West Bellevue Avenue in Littleton, right along the South Platte River and adjacent to the CWCB right-of-way. And in the past, beginning in 2016, the Pint Room was given special use permits at specific times during the summer to use the land outside of the restaurant within the CWCB right-of-way, primarily for live music. However, in 2020, amid the COVID-19 pandemic, these approved outdoor activities were expanded to include outdoor dining during the summer months. And then in 2021, when the Pint Room requested use of the land again, the AG's office determined that a 3-year limited use license was the appropriate route to take, which would give the CWCB a sufficient level of flexibility in determining the terms and conditions while retaining the CWCB's ability to revoke the license if the terms and conditions were not met. So the board approved that limited use license in May of 2021, and that license expired this past November. So the Pint Room is requesting another limited use license, which would be effective from 2024 through 2026, beginning this year, pending the approval of you all, and after all the terms and conditions are met and appropriate signatures are acquired, and until November of this year, and then it would be effective from April 1st through November 1st for both 2025 and 2026. So staff recommends approval of the limited use license, and that was quick, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Director Brown?
I move staff recommendation on agenda item 24.
Okay, we have a motion. Is it Director Brody second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're done. So I guess we're adjourned. Thank you. Oh, wait. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I thought if it was on the agenda, you didn't need a motion. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Please. Who moved? Jackie. Okay. Director Cloud second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.